Hello everyone, this is Tom. We are back with another installment of the LC Benchmark tutorial series. This is my second attempt at this particular portion of the tutorial. And I'm realizing that creating benchmarks is not that straightforward with the actual benchmarking. So in this episode, we will create our the structure of our benchmarks and the runtime of our benchmarks, but I will not be creating the actual benchmark tests here or writing the code for them anyways. So I will have those ready for the next session. So in this session, what we'll do is we'll just set up the sort of how we're going to how we're going to store our benchmarks, how we're going to run them, and how we're going to display the results. So we'll work to make our application user-friendly with user feedback. So those are the features of the App Starter Stack that I will show you today. Let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fix the slight issue here we have with this button. So the issue is that it's a layering issue. So we're gonna just rearrange these to make sure that they are appropriately layered so that the resizing happens right. So we need the widget to be above the button. That's the button, that's the widget, this thing, this grid. So let's edit our group. And yeah, let's just make this the last one, or before last one. Okay. This should be better now. Let's leave and come back. Yeah, it's better now. Okay. So what we need next is a list of benchmarks that we're gonna run. So I just have the sample list here. This is probably not the final list of benchmarks. There's probably gonna be a lot more. There's gonna be some that will stay, some that will go. But what I have here is a list, and each item is separated by a pipe. So we have the handler name that will run, the number of times that this handler will run, and then the description of the test. So we need a place to store this inside our application. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go to the benchmark card, and I'm going to add a custom property and call it benchmarks, and then paste our list in here. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we want to populate this list with our benchmark tests. So let's go to the card stack and go to the on card open refresh, or on initialize card, and we'll just do a little script here. Referencing this custom property. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually create an array, global benchmarks, and we will put our data from this custom property in there. So we'll put make the item delimiter the pipe so it can separate the items here, and then we're gonna put item 1 of line X of the benchmarks of me into benchmarks, and then X, and then handler name. We'll go like this, and then we'll put item 2 and 3. 2 and 3. We'll put iterations and description. Okay, so when we enter this card, this array will be updated each and every time, so that when we have an update to our benchmark list, we just add it to here and it will work. So next, what we need to do is we need to update our grid to this array that we just made. So let's have a look. So what we need is we need some columns. So let's go down here, column names. We have handler name, iterations, and description. And then we also want the result of the benchmark and also operations per second. Okay, so these are the 5 columns that we want our grid to have. So you can see the columns were created here. We'll leave this as it is for now. Later on, what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually resize the grid based on the size of the window. Like we'll do proportional resizing of these columns. So that will be fun. But for now, let's save our work. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to populate this grid with our benchmarking information. So the property that we must populate is PG data. Okay, so I'm gonna go here, set the PG data of widget benchmarks of me to, and then we'll go. Now, in doing this before, I ran into a live code bug, which I will demonstrate to you just in case you ever have any issues with this. So we're gonna find out that our loop here does not run. It is not recognizing the number of lines in the benchmarks of me. So we will look at our property, and we definitely have a property called benchmarks that is not empty. So what's happening here is that it's actually getting mixed up with this global variable. So if we, for example, if we change the global variable, it will then work correctly. But you can see here that the keyword never refers to variables, but it refers to custom properties. So we do have that correctly, but the engine is mixing it up. So do not name your custom properties the same as your global variables, or maybe even local variables. I'm not sure. So we're gonna rename our global variable to my benchmarks. And then this will work. just fine. Okay, so let's try leaving and coming back. Yeah, and now our array will get updated correctly. There we go. And now you can see our grid is populated. So next what we'll do is we'll set up the running of our benchmarks. Actually, and we'll do a little bit of coding here. So this is our run benchmark button. So what we want to do, we're gonna actually unlock our screen. Okay, so the first thing that we need is a handler that will wait for the next millisecond to start before it starts, before it continues. So this is really simple. So basically this handler is going to record the millisecond count, and then it's gonna wait until the millisecond count changes, and then it'll just exit out. So that will literally produce the effect of waiting for the next millisecond. Okay, so this is helpful to make sure that each of our benchmark starts at the beginning of a millisecond count, and that way we get the most accurate reading as far as operations per second. So next we'll just copy this over and we'll have it in here in our loop. So now we want to make a loop that iterates through our benchmarks and then runs the handler that is associated with this benchmark. So we'll go repeat with x equals 1 to item 2 of the extents of my benchmarks. And we need to add the global variable. Okay, so now we have the beginnings of a loop, and now we're gonna wait for the next millisecond. We're gonna start our timer, time me, and then we'll put my benchmarks x as, and then the handler name as the label for our timer, and then our second parameter is start. And then we're gonna copy this, put it at our end, and put stop. So this will time how long it takes to get from this line to this line. So now we're gonna dispatch our handler name, to stack code library, which is where we're going to put our benchmark handlers. So we wait for the next millisecond, we start the timer, we run the benchmark, we stop the timer, and now we want to, after we are done with all our benchmarks, we want to add up all the results. But for now, let's first store the result. So I think there is a function which reads the result of timer result. So the name of the timer, and it'll just return the number of, so this just returns the value of our timer, but it's divided by 1,000, so it gives us this 0.01 seconds timer, and we don't really want that in this case. So I'm going to add a parameter to this. I'm going to just work on these conventions here, start using them, and then we go if p return this equals millisecond, then else, and if, and we're just going to return the millisecond count without dividing it. Okay, and then maybe we'll do, so this returns a string, which is cool now, but we want a number back. So this is going to work for what we need. So we need to go back to this and put timer result into my benchmarks x, and then results. Okay, we want to pass our parameters, so we want to pass the handler name, and then ms to just get the number back. Okay, so now our result is stored in our array, so that's good. And then we want to do the operations per second. So what we'll do is copy this, and then put this and this, divided by 1,000 into OPS. Okay, so we get our timer result, and then we fix our array, or populate the row in our array, and then what we need to do is update it at the end of the benchmark. So let's go to this card, steal this line of code, and at the end of the results we want to populate our grid with the results. So first we need to add up the results. So we'll go repeat, we'll just actually copy this because we already have it, no sense in and then we need a variable score, or let's just call it total time. Okay, and now we want to put add this to t total time, and then what we want to I think our field is called score. Yeah. So then we want to just populate the field to t total time. Okay, so let's go over this. We want to wait for the next millisecond. We want to start the timer. We want to dispatch the handler name. We want to stop the timer. And then we want to record the results, calculate the operations per second. So now what we need to go to our code library and start putting in our handlers for our benchmarks. But the handlers will not contain the actual tests just yet. They will just be empty benchmarks. So yeah, I'll pause the video and I'll manually enter these and then I'll come back. Okay, so now we have all our handlers put into here. We're also gonna pass the iterations count as we trigger these handlers. So let's go to our run benchmark button and make sure that when we dispatch our handler name, we dispatch the number of iterations. Okay, so let's go back to the code library, and we're gonna just do artificial wait. Just to give the appearance that our benchmark is taking some time to finish. So I'm just gonna paste this into each one of these. Okay. I'll have these benchmarks and the rest of the benchmarks in next week's session. I also want to benchmark the graphics, I guess the graphics library of LifeCode, and see how it handles, how fast things go. So, okay. So I believe everything is fine here. We might have some line drops. Let's go back to here and let's review this. So we have we wait for the next millisecond, we start the timer, we dispatch the handler name to the stack code library with the iterations, we stop the timer, we record the result, we calculate the operations per second, and then we do that for each benchmark test, and then we add up the results of each. So because our timing is so tight, all of these things will not, all of the lines, these lines and this line, it will not affect our result and adding up the results will give us the most accurate score, total score. So then we populate grid and then update the score. So I think what we want to do here is lock screen and unlock screen, just to have a nice tight update, screen update. Here what we want to do is actually we want to give some feedback to the user about which benchmark is currently running. So let's go and use the overlay message. So I'm gonna go right here, overlay message. I'm gonna just autocomplete this so that we can see our parameters. So the overlay message takes these parameters. Do we want it to clear the previous message? Yes. The message should be currently running, and then the handler name, I'm gonna concatenate it. We're gonna actually put it into brackets to make it easier to see that it's just one item. That's my sort of convention that I try to use. We don't need a command button. The background color can just be white. The size, this refers to the width of the message based on the screen, the size of the window. So we'll just put 0.85, so 85% of the window width. And then we just want to center it on the bottom of our screen. Okay, so I'm going to save this. And let's run it. Let's see what happens when we hit run. Okay, so our message didn't disappear, but our handler's all finished, and there's a result that was given to us. Okay. So at first glance here, these are all obviously fake results, random weights in our handlers, but we want to fix this. So I want to go at the end of our benchmarks. We want to send mouse up, or let's just paste this in here and go benchmarks finished, and then what we want to do is wait 2 seconds and then hide that window. I don't know what it's called. I can't remember, so let's have a look. It's in the shared user library, user interface group, and it is overlay message box. True, false. So now our message will hide after saying benchmarks finished for 2 seconds, and we also want to fix the way the operations per second works, because we're timing in milliseconds, so we actually want to go times 1,000, not divided by 1,000. So okay, let's run it again. Okay, we want to actually clear our score and our grid before we start. So let's do that. Let's set the array to empty, and then set this to empty as well. Okay, so let's save our work again. We always save our work whenever we succeed. So what else can we do here to improve this? So yeah, let's improve the way our results look. Okay, let's go to our widget properties, and let's set the handler name to be left justified. The iterations can stay like that. The description should definitely be left justified. The results can stay like that, and the operations per second can stay like that. Okay, so now let's take a look at some of the other options here. We want to okay, so since we're on the subject of fixing how things look, you can see here that our grid is sizing itself to the size of the window based on our widget based on this property. So it's taking up 95% of the width of the screen. But then when we make it bigger, it's no longer taking up 95% of the width. So the reason for this is because there is a constraint, a maximum width that's allowed of widgets, and that's actually set here, right here. It's in the start here stack, and it's in the first handler, set app starter stack defaults, and it's right here. But if we want to avoid this being used, all we have to do is select our control and add a custom property to it called DontConstrainWidth, and set that to 1. And now that constraint will not be applied, and the grid will take up 95% of the size of the window, no matter how big the window gets. So that's cool. Let's save our work. So let's go back into here, and let's add a progress bar to this, shall we? So oftentimes I don't remember the syntax of things, so the autocomplete really helps, but sometimes I just don't remember what it is. So so what I do is I go to places where I've used a certain feature, and in this case we can go to our boot card, which uses the progress update, and we'll just copy it into our Run Benchmarks button. And so what we'll do, so we're dispatching progress update with the long ID of the progress bar, which is a shared progress bar overlay progress bar in the shared user interface. So we're referencing this one. You can make a copy of this progress bar and put it anywhere else and just reference it in your update. And then the variables are the current progress, the total progress, and a sort of string to go along with it. So let's say running benchmark. Let's put, because we're inside our loop, so for the current progress we're just putting X, and then for the total we put this. Okay. Perfect. There we go. So now we're gonna have a progress loop, progress bar on our running benchmark. Let's see. Okay, well that's good. But the progress bar is covering up our message. So what we can do is we can lock the screen, we can update the progress bar, but then we move it before we unlock the screen. So we go set the top of this to the bottom of group overlay message box plus 10. So we're gonna put it 10 pixels below our message box. Let's see if that worked. Okay, well, we have a strange sort of dropping down effect over on our overlay message. Not really sure why that's happening. For now, we'll just leave it. And I'll figure that out before the next session and fix it. Okay, what do we want to do next? I think what we'll do is we'll work on arranging these columns to fit the whole width of the grid, and we'll see if that's difficult to do or not. But what we'll do first is actually we'll just close this down and we'll make a copy of it, and just because we want to have incremental backups of our work. So start it up again. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to be able to resize these columns automatically. So let's go to the widget And we see here we have a property called PG column widths. And that is where we set the pixel size of our 5 columns. So first, what I want to do is go to each of the columns, and I want to set its max to be 1,000, just so that this max setting does not hinder our own handler. Okay. And what we'll do is we'll go, so we have 5 columns, right? So what we need is a custom property that says column widths, and we need 5 percentages that all add up to 100. So let's do 30% for the first one. And then let's do, the second one is the number of iterations, so let's just do 10%. And then let's do 40%. 30%, and then 10 and 10. Let's see how that works. 30 plus 10 is 40, plus 30 is 70, plus 10 is 90. Okay, so we have 10% left, and we'll give it to the description handler because that is the longest one. So we'll see how this works after we program it in. But now we need to go and code it. So, where do we go to add something to the resize stack handler? So our widget grid widget is on the card benchmark. So if we go into the code for the card benchmark, we're gonna see a resizeCard handler. A clue. So now let's just give it a shot, okay? So now let's repeat. So we're gonna create the string that's going to go into our widget browser. I'm gonna leave this here locked. I'm going to open this up, and we're going to take a look into these properties. So we need to set this, okay? But we can't just set it to this because these are percentages and these are pixels. So we need to convert between the two, and we need to have a final string that is set to the PG column widths property. So let's go and create variable, and then let's set the PG column widths of widget benchmarks of me to this new widths. Okay. So now we need to convert these numbers to pixel values. Okay? So let's go and do that. Repeat with x equals 1 to the number of items in the column widths of widget benchmark. Okay. Now let's go just double check. Column widths is the property. Okay, so it'll iterate over each of these numbers. So we're gonna put if t new widths is not empty, then put after t new widths. Okay, so we want a comma added after each of these numbers if there's already a number inside our variable. So that way it'll create our string the correct way. Okay, so now we put the so we want to take the width of widget benchmarks and then times it by item x of the column widths of widget benchmarks. Okay, so we want to take the width of the whole widget and times it by each of these items, but we need to do each of these items divided by 100 because these are percentages. So we want to go and add a, sorry, I'll just move these around a bit here so I could see. We're gonna divide these by 100. And then we want to use a round number. With 2 decimal places. So these are the settings for okay. So this will take the width of the widget times it by each of these numbers round it off and divide the numbers by 100 to make it into a percentage. So let's go and put this after I've used one of those line drop down characters here, so I can just write on the next line. There we go. So let's see how this works. So let's send this message. Okay, so our variable is empty. That's strange. Okay, let's fix our code. Number of items in the column widths of widget. Yeah, I keep on running into this problem with okay. Okay. Number of items. So here we could see in the message box that we are getting the correct number of items returned. So I'm going to copy this. Maybe I'll change the variable just in case the X is being used in another loop. So Y should be good. Okay, so let's see. Let's send our message again. And now it's running. So I think the problem might have been that X is being used in a loop that is running this. So we don't want to do that. So let's just see if this works. So now we have, we have one pixel value and a comma. And then we have another pixel value. We're going to just run through it. And we don't have a comma at the end. So we have 5 values, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. So now, when we set the values of our, let's see. This is over here. Yes. Okay. So our value is correctly set to what we've calculated it to be. Perfect. Let's save our work. And let's try just resizing our stack. See? Our columns are resizing perfectly to match those percentages. Awesome. So what did we learn today? We learned about the resizeCard behavior handler in the card scripts. It's a handy way of adding resize operations to our whole stack. And we also learned how to use the overlay message. We also learned how to use the progress update, and we also learned how to use the time me handler to time stuff. So as you can see, we're making great progress in our benchmarking app. And I think when I come back for the next session, what we'll do is we'll put in the benchmarks that I've created. We'll run them. We'll see the results, and then we will finish making our stack and our application look professional and well manicured and detailed. So I think this is it for this week. I hope it was a useful session for you, and see you next Friday.